Humans, no matter how prolific they are in their craft, always remain at the mercy of nature. Sometimes nature supports us, but sometimes it is just outright cruel. This is the story of a storm that took the life of an experienced campaigner and a teacher who taught many how to climb. This is the story of Rob Hall. Every climber can attest to the elusive quest of finding an equally skilled, trustworthy, and unwavering companion to face the harsh and thrilling adventure of the mountains. It was Rob Hall's great fortune to cross paths with Gary Ball in 1988. As if forged by destiny, they instantly formed one of the most formidable climbing teams that the world had ever witnessed. Their meeting came hot on heels of completing the 7 summits, the highest mountains on each of the 7 continents, merely 3 years beforehand. The daring allure of this feat and the craving for adrenaline-charged ventures drew Rob Hall and Gary Ball in. They were eager to graduate from the southern Alps of their homeland and take on a challenge that would etch their names in the annals of international climbing fame. 1990 became a year of triumph for the two climbers, as millions watched live on the New Zealand's primetime television. They stood atop Everest, the world's roof. Their voices echoed through satellite phones, heralding their victory. 7 months later, they stood on Mount Vinson in Antarctica, completing the 7 summits. This feat, a speed record at the time, placed the two men at the pinnacle of New Zealand's climbing folklore. Post-mission, Hall was swept up in a whirlwind of honors and commercial sponsorships. Yet, amidst the glory, he found himself growing disillusioned. As a sponsored climber, he was pressed to keep pushing the climbing boundaries to maintain his stature and the influence. In the back of his head, Hall understood the looming danger if he continued on this challenging path. Parallel to his climbing exploits, Hall ventured into the outdoor equipment industry. After a rewarding stint at Alp Sports, he moved to MacPac Wilderness Limited, New Zealand's leading outdoor company. 4 years later, he chose to stride on his own path, founding his company Outside. His business success underlined his uncanny knack for planning, organizing, and implementing ideas. It was 1991. Hall & Ball unveiled Hall & Ball Adventure Consultants, recognizing the importance of their skill set in developing profession of high-altitude guiding. Their first guiding trip was marked by a victorious ascent to Everest the following year. They went on to conquer Aconcagua and Mount Vinson before returning to Everest in 1993 for another successful climb. Hall was joined by his wife Jan Arnold and some of his clients this time. Later that year, Hall & Ball embarked on a personal expedition to Dhaulagiri, the world's 7th highest mountain. But tragedy struck at 24,000 feet just as they were poised to hone the summit. Gary Ball succumbed to altitude sickness despite desperate attempts at therapy. Hall was forced to make the difficult decision to let his companion's body rest in a deep chasm just above the base camp, a moment he later confessed as one of the most challenging in his life. Undeterred, Hall continued guiding, rechristening the company as Adventure Consultants. By 1996, he had led 3 successful Everest expeditions and made a name of high-altitude guiding, paying clients, each doling out a hefty $65,000, were drawn to the company that could guarantee their dream of reaching the summit. Yet, Hall had an unblemished reputation for prioritizing client safety over summit dreams. In 1995, when heavy snowfall threatened their ascent, he chose to turn his clients back, a decision that didn't tarnish his reputation but instead enhanced his credibility as a safe guide. The fateful 1996 trip saw 8 clients and 3 guides, with only 5 attempting the summit. 3 Americans, John Krakauer, Doug Hansen, and Beck Weathers, were among Hall's clients. The expedition proceeded according to plan for weeks, until the last few hours when an unforeseen series of catastrophes unraveled, transforming May 10-11 into one of the bloodiest days in Everest's history. On May 10, they launched their summit push, only for Weathers to be struck with blindness due to UV exposure and a prior corneal surgery. Despite this setback, Hall pushed forward with the rest of the group, leaving Weathers behind, expecting a quick return after reaching the summit. As they ascended, they found no fixed lines, forcing Hall to undertake this task, causing further delay. The unforeseen task created a bottleneck at the mountain's peak, prolonging the summit push. As time passed, the group missed the crucial 2 p.m. deadline set by Hall for the descent. Ignoring his rule, they reached the peak and began their descent, but it was past 3 p.m. As if punishing their audacity, a heavy snowstorm enveloped the mountain. The team descended, leaving Hall behind with an exhausted Hansen, who gave in to the treacherous slope. Another guide, Andy Harris, is believed to have stayed with Hall for a while, but his fate remains unknown as his body was never found. After Hansen's death, Hall decided to bivouac just below the south summit, staying in radio contact for over 30 hours. Despite the worsening conditions and his difficult situation, Hall insisted he was alright, refusing to put anyone else's life in danger for his sake. However, after over 30 hours high up on the mountain, his radio contact became increasingly infrequent until it ceased altogether. And finally, the storm had the better of Hall. As this tragedy unfolded, more lives were claimed by the merciless mountain. Yasuko Namba, the oldest woman to have attempted Everest at the time, died during the descent in the storm. 3 Indian climbers lost their lives on the North Ridge the same night. Lead guide of the expedition, Scott Fisher, succumbed on the descent after summiting at 3:45 p.m., likely a victim of altitude sickness exacerbated by the blizzard. The disaster received international attention due to the reports of John Krakauer, an American writer on assignment for Outside magazine. His subsequent book, Into Thin Air, about the incident became a bestseller but stirred controversy within the climbing community. Critics argue that Krakauer, lacking previous 8,000-meter experience, was overly harsh in questioning expert judgments. "31 Nepalese Sherpas in 2004 embarked on a mission to extract the dead bodies of the perished mountaineers. They left Kathmandu, their goal to retrieve the remains of 4 or 5 climbers and remove several tons of waste that littered the mountain. The harsh reality of Everest is that once a climber succumbs, the retrieval of their bodies becomes nearly impossible, primarily due to the exhaustion experienced by the surviving climbers at such extreme altitudes above 8,000 meters. Tragically, the bodies of the lost comrades are often left frozen where they fell, immortalized in their final resting place. Of the estimated 300 bodies that lay on the mountain, only half have ever been retrieved. While some bodies lay unreachable in remote locations, others are closer to the main path, rendering them more accessible for potential retrieval. The expedition leader, Namgyel Sherpa, stated with conviction, "It is not acceptable to leave dead bodies there." He added, "The mountain is also a source of water. The sight of the deceased is not just disturbing for future climbers, but it also goes against the norms of Nepalese law and culture." Jan Arnold, the widow of Rob Hall, expressed her desire for her husband's body to remain on the mountain. According to her, it's where he'd like to have stayed, and his body lay far from the main path. It was not until 1999, 3 years after the tragic event, that his body was identified. Even to this very day, Rob Hall's frozen remains reside beneath the south summit, serving as a poignant reminder of that horrific day. Hall was raised in humble conditions on New Zealand's South Island. The nearby Southern Alps ignited his fascination for mountain climbing. After leaving school early, he entered the workforce as a designer and manager for various companies, producing outdoor clothing and climbing equipment. As a teenager, Hall journeyed to the Himalayas, where he ascended Dablin in 1980 and Number in 1981, both towering at nearly 23,000 feet or 7,000 meters. Upon returning to New Zealand in June 1981, he achieved the first winter ascent of Mount Cook's formidable Caroline Face, the highest peak in the country. Hall also lent his expertise as a guide for the New Zealand Antarctic Research Program in Antarctica. Nonetheless, his passion for the mountains made him a man of honor, a man whose body rests in cold, but his legacy remains warm and unforgettable. Subscribe to Adventure Uncovered for more blues from the world of adventure. We have made another thrilling video covering the enigmatic death of seasoned actor James Dean. Click on the video link popping up to watch now, and we will catch you there in a second.